Good afternoon and welcome to Liquid Lunch with the Regional Water Authority here on 103.5 WNHH, anytime on video on New Haven Independent's YouTube page or as a podcast on Apple and Spotify. I'm Kevin Watsey. I am the Director of Public Affairs at the Regional Water Authority, and I am a water nerd. And today we are going to talk about water, specifically freezing water, because guess what? It's cold outside. If you're listening to this live, it's a Thanksgiving week. It's been pretty cold out. So I thought, what a better time to have a show where we talk about common plumbing issues people have when it gets cold, how to prevent them, and what can you do if you have one of these plumbing issues. And we are also going to talk about, if we have enough time, some plumbing issues that don't have to do with the cold, but just common plumbing issues if you're a homeowner. So I am a water nerd, but I am not a plumber, so I invited a plumber here to educate us. My guest today is Adam Pandolfi. He is RWA's Cross Connections team lead, and he's a licensed plumber. And towards the end of the show, we're going to talk exactly what Cross Connections is. We'll save that to the end. But for now, as we do every show, Adam, I'm going to welcome you and ask you to tell us your story. Where'd you grow up, and how did you get to where you are now?
I grew up in North Haven, not far from here. I went to North Haven public schools. I went to Eli Whitney for my first 2 years of high school for electrical, and then went back to North Haven and graduated. I went to college for a year and found out it wasn't for me, and then I broke into the plumbing trade.
And so you've been a plumber since, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been a plumber for about a good 30 years now.
And I want to key in on something you said. You realized college wasn't for you. So I've on this show, since we started, I've said a few times, there's a whole world out there of students who college is not right for them, and that's okay. We have had I think the past 20 years, kids have had beaten into their brains that they have to go to college, they have to go to college. I like to talk about the fact that college is not right for everybody, and there's a whole world out there for kids that college isn't right for them. And I'm so glad that you brought up the fact that college wasn't right for you, and you've had a very good career as a plumber for the last 30 years. With that, I actually would like to ask you, how does somebody become a plumber? In the state of Connecticut, if there's a kid out there, even if somebody looking for a career change, if they wanted to become a plumber, what's the process or the path? How do you become a plumber in the state?
You start off as an apprenticeship. You serve as an apprentice. You start off as.
So you have to find a licensed plumber who's willing to kind of take you on.
Correct, okay. Or get into one of the plumbing unions, Local 777. And you have to serve what's called an apprenticeship, which usually lasts 4 to 5 years, and consists of 8 to 10,000 hours on the job.
8 to 10,000 hours.
Yeah, 2,000 hours works out to be a year. So it's 4 to 5 years.
Just when you say it that way, it sounds so long.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
But basically, you find a plumbing contractor to work for. You make sure that he registers you with the state of Connecticut as an apprentice.
Okay.
So your hours count towards your apprenticeship. And once you qualify, with the hours and the time, you also have to go to school, whether it be night school or whether it be during the day. Today, there's a lot of different avenues to go for school. It doesn't have to just be a state technical school anymore. Where back in the day when, I was going to school, it was. You had to go to, I went to Eli Whitney at night. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of other state technical schools. And then, after that time, you put in your schooling and your apprenticeship hours, you're able to sit for your plumbing exam for your P2 license.
And so to get the apprenticeship, do you need any kind of education or experience to get the apprenticeship, or will a plumber kind of take a flyer on somebody who's literally has never touched a pipe before?
Yeah, you should have some sort of mechanical, technical skills, okay. But really anybody can go into the plumbing trade that's really interested in it and thinks that might be a good fit for them.
And then once you get the license, do you have to get like education credits to maintain it, or
you do. Connecticut requires plumbers take CEU, get a CEU certificate every other year to maintain their license.
So before we get to cold weather tips, I'll just say, so folks who call plumbers because they're having a plumbing issue and the plumber comes out at 2 or 3 in the morning and then the person complains about the bill they get, just remember, you're not paying them just for the hour they spent in their house. You're paying them for the 5 years they were an apprentice and all the years beyond that that they took to keep up their craft. So don't complain about that bill. I said it, Adam didn't, but I'm sure you agree with me on that. Yeah. I always say I will never complain about a bill that I get from a professional plumber or electrician, because I realize I'm paying for those years of experience too.
Yes.
For them to do something that I don't know how to do. So with that, as I said, it's getting cold outside. The water company, we usually put out different kind of education materials around this time of year to tell folks how they can protect their plumbing from the cold weather. If you're out there listening, I'm sure most of us have had frozen pipes or, other weather-related plumbing issues. So I actually do want to kick off with probably the most common problem that folks have when it gets cold out with their plumbing, and that is frozen pipes. So, Adam, aside from the fact that, it's freezing outside, why would your pipes inside your house freeze when it gets cold?
Well, mostly in the basements where they get a cold air draft blowing over the pipe, whether it be a basement window, a Bilco door, cold air intrusion really can wreak havoc, especially if, the water in the pipes are not moving. One other thing is too, with your outside faucets or hose spigots, you want to make sure that you disconnect all the hoses, even though you may have what's called a frost-free spigot. If you leave the hose on there and don't drain it properly, it could still freeze and split.
Does insulating your pipes help protect against like that draft coming into the house?
It does. It does. It stops the cold air from directly hitting the pipes if there is cold air intrusion in your basement.
And so is there certain things you should look out for that your pipes may be freezing? And I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's not all going to freeze at once. Like, would a slow faucet kind of indicate that something may be going on?
Yeah, if you're just getting a drip out of a faucet that normally, flows really well, you might want to take a look around and see if you have a frozen pipe. Normally these will happen on overhangs, like for kitchen sinks, maybe on a raised ranch where there's an overhang and the kitchen sink is above the overhang. Those water pipes come from underneath and they're in the overhang above the siding. So you really want to make sure that, those pipes are insulated well, that cavity in between the joists where the pipes are insulated well. Maybe, you also want to try and maybe keep those cabinet doors open overnight.
And I guess in general, if pipes are on outside walls, they're probably more prone to freezing.
They are. Yeah. They are more prone to freezing.
So what about pipe material? Like I have newer construction. I have all plastic pipe. Is plastic pipe more or less likely to freeze than copper, or does it not matter?
Copper will split before PEX splits.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about split and burst pipes, because that's a whole other mess, right?
Correct. The PEX can expand. The copper doesn't expand.
Okay. But as far as just freezing, plastic and copper will probably freeze the same way. One's not better than the other.
PEX, I think, is better than copper when it comes to freezing.
Okay. So let's talk about, if I wake up in the morning, I have no water, how do I figure out if it's a frozen pipe or if there's some other issue?
Well, you have to check more than just one faucet. I would take a look at the water main coming into the house and check that, see if your meter's moving or not, could indicate a split pipe in a wall, possibly.
So if say I have no water in my kitchen, but my bathroom's fine, then chances are my pipe into the kitchen is frozen.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. And you really got to leave the water on until it thaws to find out where the leak is, you know? So you have to monitor it. You can't just say, okay, got a frozen pipe, I'm going to go to work.
Yeah. So can I resolve that on my own? So if I have a frozen pipe, do I need to call you or another plumber, or will that kind of resolve on its own?
No, it won't. I mean, especially if it's split, you know, you're going to have to get it repaired. You know, you could certainly find it on your own, you know.
And if it splits, and we'll talk it, so, you know, the way my brain works, I love to work kind of chronologically. So now I'm a homeowner, pretty sure my pipe is frozen. Am I going to have to wait for it to thaw to know if it's split? Like,
yes.
till liquid water's flowing again?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, you want to heat up the area where the pipe is frozen and see if it is split. You open up, you know, say it is the kitchen, you keep the faucet open, you know, and you want to be able to heat that area, whether it's with a space heater or, you know, a hair dryer. But you don't want to just leave that stuff running while you're thawing the pipes and walk away. You need to monitor it.
So you say running, just leaving the faucet open and like blasting some kind of heat underneath the kitchen.
Correct.
The kitchen sink. So you really do want to monitor it in case.
Yeah, you can't just walk away and leave a hair dryer, you know, blowing on the pipes.
And the splitting happens because the water expands when it freezes and it just kind of blows out the pipe. Does the age, if it's copper, does the age of the copper have anything to do with its splitting or no?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay. So, okay, so I'm a homeowner now and I'm running some heat underneath my kitchen cabinet or whatever, and all of a sudden there's water leaking into my basement. That's when I need to call a plumber, correct?
Right. You know, and so once it is thawed and you see where the leak is coming from, that's the point you want to be able to shut your water main off.
Right, go to the main shut-off valve.
Right, because that water is gonna create some damage, whether it's sheetrock, flooring.
Yeah. And a public service announcement: if you do not know where your main water shutoff valve is, you should find it and mark it so that everybody in the house knows where your valve is.
Definitely.
In case you have a problem like this and quickly need to shut off that water, everybody will know where it is.
Yeah, I you know, run into a lot of people, you know, when I'm out there doing work, and you'd be amazed who doesn't know where their shutoff valve is. And I always make it a point to show them where it is, how it operates, so they know.
Absolutely. And a quick side story: I used to work for a water company that had service area right along the Jersey Shore, and every year around March we get a number of calls from the town begging us to go shut water off at certain houses because there was water pouring out of the front door because everything thawed and pipes were burst, and now the house is pretty much flooded.
Yeah.
You get at least 5 of those a year. The town saying, you got to go shut this water off because there's water pouring out the front.
Right. I've seen it right here in New Haven where, you know, I was driving down the street and, you know, I'm looking at the foundation of the house and you could see water just coming out of it. And the basement and casement window looked like a fishbowl.
Yeah. Water, it's a necessity to life, but boy, can it be a problem if it goes in places it's not supposed to go.
Correct. It can create a lot of damage.
So on the issue of pipes, as a plumber, what would you recommend? How do I protect myself from my pipes freezing? What are some tips for the average homeowner to protect yourself?
Well, you know, you want to make sure, like I said, that there's no cold air blowing over them, that they're located in, you know, good spots. You don't want them running right over a basement and casement window where air, you know, does come in. You know, you want to make sure if it is really, really cold out that you run the water, you know, when you get up in the morning to make sure, you know, nothing is frozen. You know, really just stuff like if, you know, you have a vanity, a bathroom sink that freezes, you can leave the doors to the vanity open so the heat, you know, from your heating system does get in there. You know, everybody thinks that only hot and cold water pipes can freeze. People that have hydronic heating systems with a boiler with a hot water baseboard, those can freeze as well.
So the actual baseboard heat, the piping within the baseboard heat can freeze too?
Correct.
Yeah, because you'd think there's hot water going through there. How could it freeze, right?
Hot water freezes before cold water. It evaporates quicker. And it's called the Pemba effect.
Hot water freezes before cold water.
Correct.
So this is the first time I'm
It
hearing about that. Can you explain that a little bit? It doesn't sound like it makes sense to me.
It evaporates quicker.
Okay.
So once the temperature starts dropping, it freezes faster than the cold water. One thing with heating systems, I know everybody loves their space heaters, their wood stoves, their fireplaces, their pellet stoves. If you have an alternative heating source close to your thermostat and that source satisfies the thermostat, you have to also worry about the other rooms in the house, especially if you have the doors closed.
Yeah.
Because it could freeze in that room, but, the thermostat is satisfied, so it's not going to kick on the heating zone.
Yeah.
So it circulates water through. That's one of the biggest problems I've seen with frozen pipes is the heating system.
Yeah, it's such a good tip too, and it actually works the other way because I lived in a house where our thermostat was in a area where there was no heat, because it was outside all the bedrooms. It was in the hallway, and there was no heat, and so the bedrooms would go up to like 90 degrees, because it would over pump because it wasn't getting
it wasn't reading.
It wasn't reading. So, what about the tip that you hear sometimes to let your faucet drip overnight? Does that work to prevent frozen pipes? Because I guess running water won't freeze as quickly, right?
Correct, it does.
Leaving a steady drip.
Yeah, if you have a sink that primarily freezes when it's really cold out, it's a good idea to leave that on. You'd rather waste the water and pay for it than have something split and cause a lot of damage. It's going to cost a lot more than it is, than what your water bill is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And RWA water is about a penny a gallon. So, you're not really.
It's a bargain.
It's a bargain compared to calling you at 2 a.m. because,
yes, it is.
Because the pipes have burst. Let's move on. So we talked about frozen pipes. How about water heaters? So do I have to worry about my water now? Actually, you just told me hot water freezes before cold water, but let's talk about water heaters and what we can do or what we need to do in the cold weather to protect our water heaters.
Well, sometimes I get phone calls saying, "Oh, the water's not as hot as it was in the summer." It's because the temperature of your water supply coming in is colder than what it was in the summer. So sometimes you have to turn the temperature up on the water heater a little bit. You really don't want anything over 120 degrees because that could be scalding, and really hurt you. And one thing, you want to maintain your water heater. If you have a tank water heater, you want to flush it once a year, and really just do an overall check around it and make sure that it's in good shape.
And that's just good water heater care, right? Yeah.
And most water heaters have a warranty of 6 years. But I've seen them last 20 years, but you really want to be proactive with it. If your water heater's old and it's going to go, you should probably change it before it does go.
Yeah.
The newer heaters are a lot more efficient. They have a lot more insulation. They lose temperature not as quick as the older ones do. So you can gain a lot with the energy that you save.
Absolutely. There's certain things in life, water heaters, car batteries, car tires, you'd rather change them out a year early than a day late.
Right? Correct.
I just got new tires on my car, and that was my philosophy. And I'd rather somebody tell me I had another 5,000 on those tires than wait until they all just disintegrated. Before we turned on the mics, you and I were talking about the tankless water heaters, and you were telling me that a lot of the tankless heaters now have like sensors in them that will actually run hot water through the house.
Yeah, they have a freeze protection, and when they notice the temperature getting cold, the circulator will kick on and circulate water through the system, which protects them from freezing.
So those are like closed loop systems. Will that water that's circulating go back into the water heater, or is that just going to... Okay.
Correct.
That's interesting. I have a tankless heater now. I'm wondering if mine actually does that or not.
Hey.
I've never had a tankless heater before I moved into this house, and I had heard such varying opinions on whether they were good or not, but I haven't had one issue with them.
Yeah, the only, sometimes it takes a little while when they initially start up to get hot water at the furthest point.
Yes.
But once they do start running, they're fine. You could always put a hot water recirculating line that recirculates water from the heater to the furthest fixture and back to the heater. So you always have hot water at point of use.
Yeah, I've been impressed. So we've had 2 showers and a dishwasher going, and have not had any problems with the with getting as much hot water as we want. So let me ask you, specifically with cold weather, are there other plumbing specific issues homeowners should be on the lookout for?
Just really to your outside faucets. Really make sure that you drain them down. You remove the hoses from them. If you have piping on an outside wall, you really want to be aware of it and make sure you don't have any issues with that.
And when it gets really cold out, this again from my experience with water companies for 20 years, your actual water service line can freeze too, right?
It shouldn't if you're below 48 inches, the frost line, coming into the house,
Yeah, I will tell you, in New Jersey, we used to get, I'll never forget, we had a cold snap that, for a solid 2 weeks, it didn't get above 10 degrees, and we were getting hundreds of calls from people that their service line was frozen. And one of the ways my old water company used to defrost them, and I'm not saying what the name of the water company is, not that there's anything wrong with this, but they would actually run a hose from the exhaust on their truck into the water, into the meter pit, and the heat from the exhaust from the truck would actually thaw out the service line. It was quick and efficient, but some people kind of would frown upon that, but it's not, there was nothing wrong with the water there.
Correct.
But it's good to know. I've been here this will be my second winter, and I can't recall last year hearing one call about frozen service lines in this area.
I didn't get one call last year for any frozen pipes. It was pretty warm,
Yeah, that's true.
But you really got to watch out. Anything like when it goes below 20 degrees, you really have to be careful. One item I want to talk about is everybody's familiar with the brand Moen.
Yes.
And Moen makes what's called puck sensors. And these are little pucks that work with an app on your phone. So you would put them in areas that might be subject to getting flooding, like under your water heater, under your washing machine, by your condensate pump for your air conditioner. And, once water does hit those, it sends an alarm to your phone, and you've got something going on.
Oh. I've actually seen, too, where they can be tied into your main shutoff valve, and it'll actually trigger the valve to turn off, too, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Safety shutoffs where, if something does pop, it automatically shuts off your water main.
Yeah, we have smart cars and smartphones, and now you can have smart plumbing. Sure. Right?
Yep.
What about if I'm out there and I have a septic tank? Do I have to worry I guess, are there any common problems septic tanks have with cold, or are they kind of immune?
I have an older septic tank at home. I haven't had any problems with it yet. But you want to make sure that the covers are, fastened stuff, and, I would think the only problem maybe would be with a leaching field, if it froze.
There's nowhere for the water to leach out. What about toilets?
Toilets? Not really. None that I can really think of with the cold weather, unless, it's on an outside wall and,
then
the heat's not on. That's another one where, people keep the bathroom doors shut and, the heating line or even the water line in the bathroom could freeze.
And then the last thing I'll bring up on this topic, irrigation systems. Now, I think most folks that have irrigation systems winterize them. Can you talk about what winterizing your irrigation system actually means?
Well, normally you would use a compressor to blow air through your irrigation system. And what they do is on your controller, you have a zone controller because you have several different zones, most likely for a lawn irrigation system. And after the backflow preventer, there should be a connection where they can hook the air hose up to and go through each zone individually and push air through it to, get all the water out so it doesn't freeze.
And that's definitely a best practice. If you have an irrigation system and you don't do that, chances are it's going to freeze.
Yeah,
right?
you should really have a professional do it.
Yeah, you can't do that on your own, right?
No.
Even if you do have your own air compressor, it's probably not a good idea to try it. So we've kind of talked about a lot of winter weather tips. I guess let's spend a few minutes talking about, some plumbing issues that folks have that maybe aren't winter weather related. But I always like to think about what's the line between me doing something myself versus me calling a plumber. Like, I guess it's different for everybody, but as a professional plumber, what would you tell folks when to call you versus try it themselves?
Well, if you haven't done any plumbing before, I don't suggest doing it. One thing I suggest, if you are going to try to attempt something, know where your main shutoff valve is and make sure it works and make sure you can get to it safely.
And I always tell people, kind of recognize your own skill set. What I'll do, I'll go on YouTube and watch somebody fix what I'm trying to do, and I can tell within 2 minutes whether or not I have the skill set to do it or not. Yeah. Quick hit, shark bites, good or bad?
I don't care for them. I don't think they belong in concealed walls, although I've seen them all over the place. But the only thing I really use them for is maybe capping off a line when I'm doing a remodel job.
Okay. So
I'm going to be taking them off and putting a valve back there.
So if you're listening at home, and you don't know what a shark bite is, it's kind of a fitting for a pipe that doesn't require any solder or any other kind of adhesive. It just kind of bites into the pipe and uses, I guess, its own friction and tension to seal the pipe.
Correct.
I used them when I had some plumbing issues when I lived in New Jersey, and luckily we didn't have any issues with them, but they were also concealed in the wall, so maybe there were issues that never really surfaced. But on their surface, they seemed like really good things for do-it-yourself plumbers at home, but especially those that don't want to burn their house down with a soldering torch.
Correct. Correct.
And then there's PEX too, which I'm sure you're okay with PEX, right?
Yeah, I use PEX now with all the new homes that I do. Pretty much.
Yeah, PEX is a pretty good thing. So what are now, you obviously you work for the RWA as the cross connection team lead, but your plumber friends out there, what do you think is the most common call that they get? Like, is there kind of pockets of the topics? Like, is it frozen pipes or like something like that, or leaks?
Toilets leaking, faucets leaking, that kind of stuff. My ceiling is dripping. Normally that's usually a toilet or a bathtub or a shower. One thing you want to do is make sure your drains are clear. Especially with the bathroom sinks. Normally, if the bathroom sink is clogged, it's right there below the stopper. Everybody always thinks that their pipes are clogged and stuff like that.
So I got one for you, and then we'll move on to cross connections. When I lived in New Jersey, I had a pipe split, and it was the pipe in the shower, and it just, when we opened up the wall, it had split. It was about a 4-inch just split. And there was oxidation around where the split was. It was kind of the greenish color on the copper. What would cause a pipe like that to just split? Not on an outside wall, so it was not exposed to cold. And it was the pipe that kind of went from where you turn the water on and off up to the shower head. And it just 4-inch split. And the house was only 25 years old.
Well, it could have froze at once. The house might have been drained down at some point if it went vacant, and the water between the shower valve and the shower head could have been trapped in there. Very well could have been. that might not have been drained properly.
So I had a plumber come in, and he could not for the life of him figure out how. It was just such an odd place to get a split like that. He could not figure out. He said maybe when it was put in that it got dinged, and that kind of messed up the integrity of the pipe, and then maybe our water was a little corrosive and started eating away at it. I don't know.
Well, it's a possibility.
Possibility. All right, so we're going to change topics now. So we've talked a lot about the winter weather and protecting your pipes, but I wanted to spend some time because Adam does lead our team that manages cross connections at the water company. And if you're out there listening and you're not a water person, you probably have no idea what cross connections mean. So, Adam, what is a cross connection, and why do we at the RWA care about cross connections?
Okay, so a cross connection is a connection from your potable water system that is connected to anything that would be non-potable, and you would worry about getting back into your drinking water. Everybody thinks of water flowing in one direction. Nobody thinks what could happen if reversal flow happens and water starts to flow the other way.
So give us an example.
So you had brought up irrigation systems, right? I don't think anybody would want to drink the water that's in an irrigation system, especially if you're fertilizing your lawn, which everybody loves a green lawn. That's why there's a backflow prevention device on your lawn irrigation system. Whether it be a pressure vacuum breaker, which is one type of backflow preventer, or an RPD, which stands for reduced pressure zone backflow preventer. Those all stop backflow.
And so cross connection is kind of that point where that non-potable system meets the potable system.
Correct.
Because obviously it's potable water going into that irrigation system.
Right.
But the second it gets in there, it's not really potable anymore.
We talked about heating systems. Heating systems are pressurized. Home heating system between 18 and 20 psi. And, so there's a backflow preventer on that. If there wasn't, and your water in your house went down to 0 psi, the water from the heating system could get back into your potable water. And then once the water, supply comes back onto your home, you could be mixing heating water in your kitchen sink, in your bathroom sink, your shower. So boilers, irrigation systems, chiller systems, any type of equipment in commercial properties and manufacturing that uses water all have backflow prevention devices on them.
And so at the RWA, we care about this, obviously, because we do not want that water that goes into those non-potable types of systems getting back into our system.
Correct.
And what are you and your team doing on a daily basis that kind of tie the two together?
we inspect facilities for cross connections. So, we go anywhere from hair salons and look at hair sinks to dog wash salons that have dog wash bathtubs and stuff like that, to big facilities that have huge cooling towers with feeds to them. A lot of these manufacturing facilities mix water with chemicals for cooling, all that kind of stuff. So we're in facilities every day inspecting for this stuff. We're testing the backflow prevention devices and keeping track of them.
And we're required to do this, right? This is not something we do just because we want to, right?
In Connecticut, we're required to inspect up to the last free-flowing fixture in these facilities. So we're really, in depth with maintenance people at these facilities, with plumbers that work at these facilities, that kind of stuff.
And how many approximate cross connections are there in our service territory?
Hopefully, no cross connections.
Well, how many are you? How many do you have to inspect?
We have right now about 10,750 backflow prevention devices that we're responsible for testing on an annual basis.
And you test those and you report those results to the state every year.
The Connecticut Department of Public Health Drinking Water Division, correct.
Yep. And you and I have discussed in the past that some of these backflow prevention devices are a little harder to get to than others. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you and your team have in kind of executing these inspections?
Yeah, we, on the fire sprinkler systems also have them as well. That was one thing that I had missed. And we have a lot of what's called a double check valve assembly, and those are backflow preventers as well. And those are mostly located on fire sprinkler systems. And sometimes they're located inside the buildings. Other times they're located in a vault in a confined space, which are a little bit more difficult to inspect and test because we have to set up for confined space. We have to test the atmosphere. We have to use a harness with a tripod or retrieval device, and it takes more than one person. It takes a team of two to do that.
Do you ever have issues where, say, a building's renovated and now the thing you need to inspect is behind a concrete wall? Like, do you ever see that or no?
Not necessarily. With renovations, though, they will, if somebody installs new equipment in front of the backflow preventer, it's difficult to get to. A lot of times if they're leaking, sometimes people just take them out altogether, which is no good, rather than, install a new one,
And so you and your team are out there every day inspecting the backflow preventers. And
correct.
You have these confined spaces. You and I have also talked that sometimes these vaults are just not maintained and they're just not safe for you and your team.
Over time they can get decrepit and stuff, and if they're not constructed properly, the tops can cave in, they flood, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this cross-connection program, while it is required by the state, it really is another way that the RWA is looking out for its customers, both, our residential customers, so that they don't suffer from having, a bad cross-connection contaminate
Correct.
the water, but also for the folks that you are inspecting, making sure that they have the proper equipment and that everything's working to protect their customers, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, again, coming from New Jersey, we didn't have that program.
Yeah.
That was not something the water company did.
We work hand in hand with building officials, health departments, town officials, people like that.
So if I'll wrap up the cross connection conversation. So 10,750, give or take. If every one of those were listening to this radio show, what would you want to say to those 10,750 owners of backflow preventers that need to be inspected?
Well, Monday is December 1st, I believe, or December 2nd.
Yep.
We've got about 30 days to get to the 750 backflows we have left to test for 2024.
And what's the number one reason why you wouldn't be able to get to one of those? Is it an unsafe condition or access?
We have some unsafe vaults that we're refusing to go into now, and we're working with the owners to get them repaired. Some people just deny us access in general. They don't want us coming in their homes. A lot of these are residential lawn irrigation ones that go untested, and another ones are what we call a active well conversion. When someone applies for service at Regional Water, we give them the option of keeping their well. Okay, if they apply for service, we give them the option, but they have to have a backflow preventer on their main domestic water line coming in, meaning Regional Water's supply.
Right, to prevent the well water from going in.
Well, they're not supposed to be interconnected. That's a state health code. In the beginning, when they first put the backflow preventer in, everything is fine, and they welcome us. Oh yeah, come on in, test my backflow, thank you. And then in 5 years, do we really have to do this again? And it takes more than a phone call. It takes several phone calls just to get in one person's house.
So if you're out there listening and you have one of these situations and Adam or someone from his team contacts you, it's work with us. Let us in. Let us inspect what needs to be inspected. It's good for you as a homeowner, a business owner, a property owner. It's obviously good for us. And at the end of the day, it's required by the state. So, we're not doing this to be a pain in your butt. We're doing this because it's required, but it's good water system management for us to do that. Thank you for explaining kind of your job. Again, it's one of those things that I think most folks don't think about when they think about the water company, but we're out there and we're doing it. And with that, I want to start our 5 unrelated questions. These are 5 questions that have nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far, but they tell us a little bit more about our guests. So, Adam, do you have any pets?
I do not have any pets.
You do not have any pets?
No pets.
If you did have a pet, what would you have?
I'll probably have a dog.
A dog? You're a dog guy. Okay. Who's your favorite band or musician?
I listen to everything. I like Marshall Tucker Band. I like Leonard Skinner. I like country music. I listen to a little bit of rap, thanks to my son. I like everything.
So you like that southern rock a little bit. Marshall Tucker, Leonard Skinner. So folks who have listened to a couple of these shows know I used to do security for concerts. I worked a lot of Leonard Skinner concerts. They were a lot of fun backstage. I used to have this older woman who used to work the green room door, and Johnny Van Zant would just walk by and hand her his bottle of Jack Daniels, and the first time he did it, she didn't know what to do with it, and I said, "Hold it. He wants you to hold it." And they come out of the room and grab it, and they were a lot of fun. Those guys. What is your favorite hobby when you're not being a plumber and a cross-connection team lead?
I like snowmobiling. I do quite a bit of snowmobiling up north, and really find it very peaceful just to get away and do that. I like deep sea fishing as well.
What's the biggest fish you ever caught?
I caught like a 34-inch striper up on Martha's Vineyard one year.
Nice. So I used to work for Rutgers University, and they have a bluefish striped bass research program, and you can actually go on their website and adopt a striper, and you can track it up and down the East Coast. They give you its unique identifier, and you can just watch the striper live its life up and down the East Coast. Cookies, brownies, or ice cream?
All three.
All three, but if you had to pick one.
I'd have to say ice cream.
Ice cream, what flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter.
Chocolate peanut butter, very good. I'm going to add a 6th question to this because I think it'll be fun for somebody who grew up locally. Pepe's Modern or Sally's?
Pepe's.
Pepe's. Nice. I haven't been to Pepe's yet. Last question. Who's your favorite teacher in school and why?
My favorite teacher in school was probably my first grade teacher, Mrs. Shatan. And she was my favorite teacher because she allowed us to bring in an engine from a car and take it apart in first grade.
In first grade?
In first grade.
That's fantastic.
That was great.
I love asking this question because you never know what you're going to get, and I can guarantee you I never would have thought I got a first grade teacher who let you take apart an engine of a car. And that was a whole class activity?
It was.
So you took apart the engine, and then obviously your teacher taught you this is a piston, this is... Yeah.
Yep.
That is
you
so
couldn't quite
cool.
put it back together, though.
Yeah. And it was a real engine, like a real big, like,
it was a real
1,000-pound engine.
From a junkyard that they mounted on a dolly with wheels, and we were able to wheel it around, and little bit by little bit we dismantled it.
That is fascinating. Well, thank you for those answers. That is it for today's show. If you're listening, the one thing I want you to take away from this show, there's a couple things actually. It is getting cold. Pipes freeze. There are ways to protect your pipes. We walked you through a whole bunch of them. You can insulate your pipes. You can just make sure there's warm air flowing across your pipes. There's a lot of different ways you can protect your pipes from plumbing, and every single one of them is cheaper than fixing a frozen pipe that bursts. So you got to look at the cost-benefit analysis of that. The other thing I want you to take away, it's almost like we did 2 shows in one. The other thing I want you to take away from the show is if you're out there and you have a backflow prevention device in your home or your business, and Adam and his team call to inspect that, let them in. They're just doing their jobs, and they're trying to protect you and protect all of our other water users. And before we sign off, I just want to take a minute to mention something that happened within the last week at the RWA. our president and CEO, Larry Bingaman, passed away. Larry was the president and CEO for about the past 15 years. He really was an innovator. He really looked to the future. His vision for the water company to be a 21st century modern environmental services company will live on in everything that we do. He was a mentor. He was a very funny guy. But most of all, he was a gentleman. And I think I speak for everybody at the Regional Water Authority when we say we're really going to miss Larry. But just because he's no longer with us, his legacy will live on, and the strategic plans that he put in place will live on and will be executed. So thank you for allowing me that 90 seconds to talk about Larry. This has been Liquid Lunch with the RWA. I'm your host, Kevin Watsy. I'm joined by Adam Pandolfi with our cross-connection team at the RWA. If you missed any portion of this show, you can watch us on YouTube or download us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. With that, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving if you're listening to this live. If you're listening to it after Thanksgiving, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.